Hey everyone. I had some back and forth with someone in a thread regarding racism in 2015. This particular person was trying to make the case for society-wide racism. That is to say that it is so widespread that all black people, experience racism every day of their lives. And people who are committing these racist acts are, I'm sure in his mind, white people. But I can't read his mind, so benefit of the doubt here. This person then asked me to ask any black person, and they will tell me that they experience. They will tell me what they experience every day. So I was sure that this person is making the assumption that black people experience racism every day of their lives. I've spoken to numerous black people. Believe it or not, half my family is either half white, half Puerto Rican, or half black, half white. I've spoken to a lot of them about this regarding the Michael Brown shooting and things of that nature, and while some of them don't agree with the grand jury ruling, they don't believe that the police officer had any racist pretenses for the killing. Some of them do, but that does not therefore prove that there were any racist pretenses regarding the Brown shooting. There was, of course, no evidence that showed there were racist pretenses in any way, shape, or form. It's just assumed by people. Some of my family also told me that the systemic racism, society-wide racism narrative perpetuated around these days is hyperbolic bullshit that they haven't experienced. I'd like to note that this person later said that they never claimed that it was the majority of people, but that black people experience it frequently. By frequently, he meant every day of their lives, so I'll toss that. And it's not the majority, but apparently widespread enough that all black people experience it every day. This person then backpedals and gives me one example of his friend getting pulled over by police because he fit the profile. I mean, you'd think if all black people experience racism every day of their lives, they'd have more specific examples. By the way, I'm excluding telling racist jokes and using race-specific terms to refer to someone else in a positive manner as racism. There are instances where people use race-specific terms in a positive manner and not to demean anyone else. I understand that the evidence I gave this person is pretty much unprovable unless I get those particular family members on camera here, and I don't think that they would be up for that. However, this person asked me to ask some black people. I have asked some black people, and they say that this person's ideas are complete shit. Their experiences do not line up with how this person portrays every black person's experience to be, which is racism every day of their lives. I sincerely would like to know what this particular person's definition of racism is. This person cited the NYPD, and that they see racist shit happen every day because they live in the southern U.S., which I'm going to call bullshit on, because later this person made the claim that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that to think that people have to, in his words, drop the N-bomb, by N-bomb I presume he means the word nigger, like Louis C.K. said, man, just say the word, take responsibility and stop hiding behind the N-word, just say the word, don't self-censor. Well, I mean, if you're a public figure, you probably want to shy away from that for PR reasons, but whatever. Moving on. This person basically made the claim that racism does not have to be done openly in order for it to be racism, and to think that someone has to be obviously racist in order to be racist is ridiculous. Of course, I claim no such thing, but that raises some slight contention over his previous point that he sees racist shit happen every day. I mean, if so many people are racist to some degree, why would they have to hide it in a widespread racist society? This is the same argument regarding the word misogynist with feminism. Feminists use the word misogynist to silence people into submission, but why would the word misogynist be shameful if we live in a misogynistic society? Wouldn't that just be par for the course? To draw the two things together, why would the term racist be a shameful term if our society is so lenient towards racism against black people? Now, I'd like to get my concessions out of the way right now. I have read a study that shows that black males receive higher sentences than white males at a rate of about 10%. So it's not incredibly high, but there's still something going on there that should absolutely be addressed. I'd also like to note the stop and frisk policy that New York City officers partake in. I think it is an assault on civil liberties that a police officer has the ability to simply stop and search your person without any sort of barrier that needs to be hurdled. It's just basically on the discretion of the particular police officer. The population of New York City is 44% white, 25.5% black, 28.5% Hispanic, 12.7% Asian, 0.8% Native American, one race other is 13%, and mixed race is about 4%. I rounded the numbers, so it may equal slightly more or slightly less than 100%, but whatever. The stop and frisks have been declining over the years in New York, thank goodness. Back in 2011, there were 685,724 stops. In 2014, there were only 26,235 stops. It's still too many. One is too many, in my opinion. However, the races regarding these people stopped measured up to 12% white, 29% Hispanic, and 55% black. That is definitely disproportionate, and I have no problem saying that the NYPD is probably one of, if not the worst police department in the United States. Why do you think, when you talk to one of these social justice, racism is everywhere people, they mention the NYPD, and only the NYPD? Why don't they ever mention the LAPD, or the police department in DC, or San Francisco, or Kansas City? They don't, because the NYPD is the actual troublesome place, and it isn't indicative of the entire country. For the record, I believe it was 89% of the people stopped and frisked were completely innocent of any wrongdoing. So, good thing we encroached on your civil liberties to catch those bad guys, huh? It's ridiculous. They jumped on the Ferguson Police Department only because the media was giving that case extra attention. If you outlined every time a white person was killed by a police officer on the news, it would look like it were happening on an insane scale as well. By the way, white people are killed more often by police officers, but screw that noise, focus on the black people. Because instead of treating black people just like everyone else, we are now a racist if we don't treat them super duper extra special. And there's automatically an assumption of racism whenever a white officer shoots a black person. I mean, we saw it even in the Antonio Martin case, where a guy actually pulled a firearm out on a police officer. Then the police officer shot him, and there were still people screaming, "Black Lives Matter!" I'm sorry, black people, and every other race that exists, but if you pull a firearm out on a police officer and you get shot, I have no sympathy for you. Your life stops mattering when you pull a firearm out and point it at an innocent person's face. That person has every right to shoot you. Now, some people will say, oh, it was actually a cell phone. Shut up. There was no phone found on the ground at the scene of the crime. There was a gun found, however. Multiple witnesses attest to the fact that Martin did pull a gun on the officer. There was a picture floating around that said, oh my god, look, in this picture there's no gun. In the next one, a couple hours later, there is a gun. Cover up. However, what these idiots fail to realize is that both pictures are pictures of separate locations. The reason you don't see the gun in the first picture is because the fucking lens isn't pointing at it. In order for that to have been a cover-up, you'd need to believe that all the witnesses are lying, the officer planted the gun, and that they hid Martin's phone. By the way, there are, to my knowledge, no witnesses who claimed that it was a phone that Martin pulled. The phone conspiracy turned up on social media after the fact. Do you think the reason why no one mentioned a phone in the first place is because he didn't pull out a phone? Nah, that's crazy. Anyway, sorry for the digression. So, this person truly believes that there's widespread racism in the United States, which is ridiculous on its face. Our society is so sensitive regarding race that people actively avoid the topic for fear of being labeled a racist if they don't agree with other people's particular worldview. I mean, look at the throngs of people protesting the Michael Brown case. There were crowds of protesters shouting, all these racist-ass cops, we don't need 'em, need 'em. They are already accusing a white officer of racism. They're seeking racism where it doesn't exist. They're actively on the lookout for anything racist in order to stomp it out. Their boot misses an awful lot, though, and ends up finding racism where it doesn't exist, and they try to pass it off as some sort of racism. I think the Black Lives Matter protests and the sheer amount of people protesting and accusing Wilson of overt racism before all the facts were in is a damn good argument to suggest that society is incredibly sensitive when it comes to race, and even finds racism where it doesn't exist. Looking at you, Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Anyway, this person compares my arguments to those made against the civil rights movement in the 60s. He compares me saying that racism is not a society-wide problem in 2015 is equivalent to me saying racism is not a society-wide problem in the early 1960s, which is completely disingenuous. Those were incredibly different times, and the racism was far more palpable than it is now. You could look at the racism, you could see it, and it would be obvious what the intent behind the violence was. Today, if a white officer shoots a black person who pulls a gun on them, it's, oh my god, racism, civil rights, Black Lives Matter. Being black does not mean you get a free pass on things. Oh wait, it does sometimes, regarding affirmative action employers. Our dedication to preventing racism has come full circle, and now we actively discriminate against white people. But who could give two shits about that? The law isn't really as serious as one that would discriminate against any other race, right? Of course. Generally, when I make these arguments, people will give me some sort of comeback which says, oh, so you're in favor of white-only scholarships and white-only employers and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not. There are two states of affairs that can occur in order to make things fair for all races. Either there are an equal amount of race-specific opportunities for every race that exists, which I believe is the worst of the two options, or you made scholarships and hiring practices based on merit. And regarding financial assistance for people, do it based on income. I sincerely don't understand why it has to be done by race. I've mentioned this before, but you leave impoverished white kids in the dust when you make race-specific opportunities like this. There are impoverished white people out there, believe it or not, and they're living in those exact same bad neighborhoods that some impoverished black people live in. And furthermore, if we base these things on merit and financial need, then it would cover all of these impoverished people, and not just the black ones. Yet when the system these types of people propose, Jaden Smith has access to resources that a poor white kid from Chicago does not have access to. And that's bullshit. There are also well-off black people out there. Surprise! Alright, I've been rambling for far too long. Basically, in conclusion, if you're going to tell me that there's a systemic, societal, US-wide problem in the United States as a whole, you need to do a little bit better than some guy looked at me funny one time and it just had to be because of my race, right? Just because you're treated negatively, it does not follow that you were treated negatively because of your race. And I think that that is one of the main problems with this entire racism thing. Most of this is based off of Peggy McIntosh's Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack garbage anyway, and most of her points include reading other people's minds and deciphering through some sort of psychokinesis that their behavior was just because of that person's particular race. Also, I think ending the war on drugs could solve a lot of problems as well. Just gonna toss that out there in the end. Alrighty. Have a wonderful day.